conquest of British Somaliland was a military campaign during World War II, taking place in the Horn of Africa in August 1940 between the armies of Italy and Great Britain. It was part of the East African Campaign. When Italy entered World War II on the side of Germany on June 10, 1940, the Italian troops were not prepared for a prolonged war in North Africa and East Africa. In light of this circumstance, the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini ordered to limit themselves to only small offensive operations in the territory along the borders of the Italian possessions with the English-held Egypt, Sudan, and Kenya. Later, at the end of June, Amadeus of Savoy, the Duke of Aosta, the Governor-General and Viceroy of Italian East Africa, convinced the Italian High Command, Comando Supremo, to begin preparations for the conquest of British Somaliland. King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy and Mussolini ultimately agreed with Amadeus, and the offensive was scheduled to begin in early August 1940. Italian troops preparing for an offensive in British Somalia in August 1940 were under the command of Guglielmo Nassi, commander of the Eastern Sector Forces. These forces included 23 colonial battalions organized into 5 brigades, 3 battalions of blackshirts, and 3 groups, referred to by the Italians as band, of local African inhabitants. The Italian army also had armored vehicles, light tanks L-335 and medium tanks M11/39, artillery, and most importantly, a fairly significant air support. In total, the Italian forces in the region at the beginning of the campaign numbered around 24,000 men. At the time of Italy's entry into the war, in June 1940, British forces in Somalia were under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Reginald Cheater, the commander of the Somaliland Camel Corps. By early August, promoted to brigadier general, Cheater commanded a contingent of approximately 4,000 soldiers, which included the Somaliland Camel Corps Cavalry, the 2nd Battalion of the Royal African Rifles from Nyasaland, the 1st Battalion of the Northern Rhodesian Regiment, the 3rd Battalion of the 15th Punjab Regiment, and the 1st East African Battery of Light Artillery, armed with 4 3.7-inch, 94mm howitzers. On August 7, reinforcements arrived in British Somaliland from Aden, the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Punjab Regiment, and on August 8, the 2nd Battalion of the Black Watch, Scottish Highlanders. Cheater's troops not only faced a catastrophic lack of artillery, they had no tanks or armored vehicles at all, nor did they have anti-tank rifles to be able to counter the Italian light and medium tanks. On the night of August 3, 1940, the Italian army crossed the border between Italian East Africa, referred to by Italians as Africa Orientale Italiana, AOI, and British Somaliland. Due to the cliffs, which rise over 4,500 feet 1,400 meters that run parallel to the coast about 50 miles 80 kilometers inland, there are only 3 passages to Berbera, the capital of British Somaliland and its only major port, that allow the passage of wheeled and tracked vehicles. The most direct and wide road leads to the city of Hargeisa. As a result, the Italians moved in 3 columns along these 3 roads. The western column moved towards the small port of Zila near the border with French Somaliland, the central column headed for Hargeisa and Adadal, and the eastern column proceeded to Odwine and Buro. The Italian plan was as follows. The western column was to block French Somaliland, and then send a small part of its forces to assist the eastern column. The central column was to occupy Hargeisa, after which it would launch the main offensive towards Berbera through the Murgo Pass. The eastern column was to move towards Odwine, covering the flanks of the central column and being ready to join it if necessary. On August 5, 1940, the port of Zila was occupied by the western column of Italian forces under the command of Lieutenant General Bertaldi. Any possible assistance to the English from French Somalia was now excluded. As planned, small forces separated from the western column and began advancing southeast along the coast, capturing the village of Bulher. The Italian central column, commanded by Lieutenant General Carlo de Simone, faced great difficulties due to the mountainous terrain through which it was advancing. Near Hargeisa, the column was temporarily halted by the forces of the Camel Corps and the Northern Rhodesian Regiment. However, de Simone had several light tanks, which determined the outcome of the battle. On August 5, the English were forced to retreat. De Simone needed 2 days to secure his position in the occupied Hargeisa, after which he resumed the offensive through the Karim Pass towards Tugargan, the bed of a dried-up river in the Assa Hills. The eastern column under the command of Lieutenant General Bertalo, primarily consisting of irregular troops made up of Africans, reached Odwine on August 6 and then headed towards the village of Adadal near Tug-Argan.by. This time, Chiter had strengthened his Camel cavalry corps with detachments of so-called Ilalos, small units from local African tribes, which performed police functions in peacetime and, periodically troubling the Italians with brief skirmishes, ordered the main British forces to retreat to Tug-Agran.